It's Thanksgiving Day 2008, and Betty Silliman is preparing dinner for a family of 4 in her Apex, North Carolina home. But on this evening, only 3 will be at the table. Her son, Matt Silliman, is still not home after abruptly leaving 2 days prior.
It was just getting harder because I thought he'll be home for Thanksgiving. I did not expect him not to be home for Thanksgiving. I mean, that was a family time, and I decided I'll go ahead and make a meal and try to put it together, and he didn't show up. And we went ahead and sat down together as a family and had our Thanksgiving meal.
The last time Betty saw the 18-year-old was at 10 p.m. on the 25th of November, when he ran upstairs to grab some stuff. Betty, who was on the phone with her other son while her husband was downstairs, said she actually saw Matt leave twice that night, the first time being at 7 p.m.
Matt had come running in real fast and run upstairs to get something, and he had told Ben that he was going to get something for somebody and he'd be right back. And so then he ran, because I could hear the running up and down the stairs, and then he ran out the door and didn't come back.
Matt had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder just weeks before and was prescribed medication for it, which was under lock and key. Betty said after he left a second time, she placed his medication on his bed and went to sleep at midnight.
The next morning, how were you? How'd you wake up?
I don't remember what time it was, but I just know that we went in to see, if he got home, and he wasn't there.
Betty said as the hours rolled by, she became increasingly more concerned. At 4:30 p.m. that day, she called 2 people closest to Matt, his girlfriend, and someone who drove him around town, but they said they had no idea. That night, the Sillimans contacted the police, who put out what's called a silver alert for a missing person with cognitive impairment. When she spoke to police, Betty recalled that a couple of weeks earlier, on the night of November 7, a scared Matt came home and ran to his room.
Well, that night when Matt came home, he seemed very disturbed and wouldn't talk to me, and just went into his room. I don't know when it was dark, but and just went into his room and laid down, didn't say anything. And I could tell from the way he acted that he was upset about something. And so I went into his room and I sat on him and I said, "Matt, you have to talk to me. I'm your mom." He didn't really want to tell me, but he finally told me. He said, "Well, there's a hitman out to get me named Roger."
Did you ever hear the name Roger from Matt again?
Yes.
Okay.
When Ben came home from Colorado, we said we wanted to bring it up at his meeting with Dr. Van Dyke.
So the week before the week of Thanksgiving.
Right. He talked to him with his psychiatrist, and Matt was very agitated and got angry and didn't want to talk about it. And he said, "Oh, that's a fictitious person."
Matthew Silliman was adopted at just 10 days old from Volunteers of America in Shreveport, Louisiana on September 10, 1990. He was in the Information Technology program at Apex High School, which required him to take up an internship that involved collecting data for a department at NC State University, for which his father, Ben, was a professor. He was heavily involved in camp activities, including the Sea Scouts, and became an Eagle Scout in 2007 after earning 31 merit badges. He also became a counselor at the camp and was in the youth group at his local church.
Matt was always full of energy. He just had a great personality. He was very outgoing, very outspoken in the sense that you knew what he was thinking. He was very friendly with everybody. He was very loyal to his friends, and it didn't matter what you looked like. He didn't look at what you looked like on the outside. And so he had a great variety of friends that way, which made me consider, that also, because I was probably more judgmental than he was. Matt always added excitement and made life fun for us, and made me look at life differently. than I did before.
But Betty noticed a change in Matt's behavior when he returned in late August or early September from a 2-month trip at camp that summer, 2008.
He acted more distant. Actually, when I dropped him off at camp, he didn't want to kiss me goodbye. He just wanted to go. But when he got home, he seemed more distant. He didn't even want to come into the house at night. He would sit in the cul-de-sac, or he'd be on the swings out back, just sitting there in the dark. I wondered why he wasn't friendly, and I wasn't sure why he wouldn't come in, and he didn't want to always come to dinner. When he came back, he seemed down, and the spring before, he had had dreams of suicide. He started drinking, smoking, and we told him we didn't like smoking at all, and so he would go outside to smoke. He said he had to clear his head a lot. Around mid-September, Matt came to us and gave us a flyer for Holly Hill Hospital and put it by our door upstairs, and we asked him what that was all about, and he said that he wanted to go there. And we had called his psychiatrist that had been treating him for ADHD and had an appointment with the psychiatrist. And then at that time, they had diagnosed him as bipolar.
By mid-September, Matt was prescribed anti-bipolar medication Depakote and was seeing 2 psychiatrists every week. At 6 p.m. on September 30, Betty said she was on her way home from the school at which she taught when she got a call from Matt's best friend since 5th grade, 17-year-old Adil Khan. Adil told her that Matt made a concerning Facebook post about joining his friend Keto, who died from hanging 2 years prior after playing a choking game that was unnervingly popular in that period, and which resurfaced more recently on the social media app TikTok. Betty hadn't been home yet, but she was told that the phones were ringing off the hook. That is because people at the church where Matt volunteered saw the post as well. When Betty got home, she said she saw 2 ambulances and a fire truck. Matt was taken to WakeMed, where he stayed for a day before being admitted for 5 days at Holly Hill, a hospital that provides psychiatric and addiction services. He was dispatched with a higher dose of Depakote, which appeared to stabilize his mental health. By October, Matt had a girlfriend named Michelle and friends who would appear to have a rubbing off effect on how he interacted with family. Betty didn't like that he started wearing gothic clothing. He also got ear piercings and started dyeing and bleaching his hair. There were also occasions when he stayed out late without calling home. These changes after camp coincided with Matt hanging out with some friends, including 17-year-old Allegra Dahlquist and his friend from 7th grade, 17-year-old Ryan Hare. Earlier that year, for example, he went out paintballing all night with Adil, Ryan, and Allegra, who, as mentioned, was the driver of the group. These little escapades prompted Betty to want to know who these friends were. At the beginning of the fall, she had that opportunity, if only briefly. Allegra parked her Toyota 4Runner outside of the Silliman home as she, Ryan, and Adil waited for Matt.
And so they came over in Allegra's car and just sat in her car, didn't get out of the car. And I just put my head in and just said, hello. And nobody smiled. So I wondered, but there was more conflict in the home. He was more, kept to himself. And we had discussed his clothes and his ears, and I was against it. I didn't like the way he looked. And his dad said, well, as long as it's what's on the inside that matters. And so he, made me think about that.
These were some of the additional changes in Matt before that November 7 day, when he told his mom about Roger for the first time. Earlier that day, Matt was caught drinking and carrying a knife at school, which prompted a suspension and an order to do mandatory counseling for alcohol abuse. That night, before he told his mom about Roger, he had purposely turned off all the lights and had all the blinds closed. After telling her about the mysterious hitman, and despite assurances from Betty that there wasn't such a man out there, he took his mom's cell phone and left home, only to return about an hour later and go immediately to bed.
Anything else unusual happened between November 7th and the second week of November?
It seems like he spent a lot of time with his friends, but he did come home for his dad's birthday on the 17th.
The 17th of November. Mm-hmm. And when you say he spent a lot of time with his friends, what What friends are you referring to?
Allegra and Ryan and Adil.
Okay. Were they coming over to the house at all during this time period?
They would just come in the car and he would run out.
Betty said she tried calling Matt's phone constantly on the 26th, one day before Thanksgiving, but he was not responding.
Let's move to the 30th.
Okay.
Have you heard anything from Matt?
Not at all. And I was starting to become emotional, and I would wake up crying, go to bed crying, wake up in my sleep crying. And so I thought, I'm just going to go look for him because it had been quite a long period. And so I went over to Adil's house that night looking for him, and his sister, Adil's sister, came to the door and said that there was a family emergency, and she didn't have any idea where Matt was. And then after that, I drove over to Michelle's house, and her mom came out, and she didn't know anything either. I didn't see Michelle till later. Then about a half an hour later, she came over to our house and brought cookies to us.
It wasn't unusual for Matt to go out camping by himself, so the absence wasn't too concerning in the immediate period. Then a couple of days later, on Monday, December 1, the Sillimans got what sounded like a possible break, when Ryan, Allegra, Adil, and Michelle showed up at their home with some information.
And based on your personal knowledge, what was discussed at that meeting?
They came and sat in my living room with my husband and said that evidently Vicki Thomas's debit card had been stolen and somebody had put a charge on it. And they thought maybe Matt had it and that maybe he was in the D.C. area.
Ms. Silliman, do you know how Michelle was acting when she came to the house there that afternoon?
She was crying and crying and crying, and Allegra had her arm on her and was patting her, Ben said.
How about Mr. Hare and Mr. Kahn? Do you know how they were acting?
I guess just cool, you know, like they were trying to be helpful.
We did the best we could to give him what little we had. We told about where he would have gone, places he talked about going. We actually, me and Adil had a bet going to whether he'd show up in D.C. or Florida. See, I remember the bet. I said he was going to show up in D.C. Well, first, Adil thought Louisiana, but then he later changed his mind to Florida. He thought Matt was going to go try to find his long-lost mother.
I had started spying on Matt and his chats because I wanted to know what he was up to. And I guess he had told everybody except us that he was going to Washington, D.C. to go visit Vicki.
Yeah, the 21st to the 23rd. He had to get back in time for school on Monday.
And so you said prior to coming up on the 21st, you had a conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about the conversation you had?
He was scared about a guy named Roger he thought was out to get him, after him. Like, Matt thought he had said something or did something to, I don't know, step on someone's toes.
Was he able to tell you what he thought he had done?
Mm-hmm. He just said that he knew too much. My internal reaction was that I just figured he'd piss someone off at school and maybe they were going to rough him up a little bit. I wasn't convinced that someone was actually out to get him, but he seemed very fearful.
And did you talk about this Roger situation once or more than once?
It was more than once, but usually very briefly.
And why was it brief?
Because he said he didn't want to get me involved.
Victoria was in her first year at an all-girls school in Arlington, Virginia, when she sent a Facebook friend request in October to Matt, who she reconnected with through her boyfriend. Victoria and Matt were in band together at Apex High School before they parted ways. It was a Friday afternoon, the 21st of November, when Matt took a train, paid for by Victoria, to see her in Arlington.
He didn't want to go out in daylight. Like, he had his hoodie up a lot.
When he came to visit you?
Yeah.
And was that unusual for you?
It was unusual, yeah, it was.
How was it that it came to be that Matt came up to visit you?
I'd originally asked Chris, my boyfriend at the time, and he said no, he couldn't. And I was joking about it with Matt, and Matt said yeah. He said he needed a vacation.
Was your boyfriend upset about that?
Yes. We went and saw a movie. We drank a lot. And we watched a whole bunch of really crappy horror films.
Did you ever become intimate with him?
Yes.
Was it something that you all had planned on doing?
No.
Do you know whether or not Matt told anyone?
I remember he said that he told like 1 or 2 people, and that was about it. I don't remember the names.
Prior to this encounter, Victoria had connected over Facebook with Adil, who had sent her a friend request about a week after she and Matt started talking again. She said she accepted it because she knew the two were friends.
What type of information was being asked of you by Adil?
What happened on the weekend he came up.
At any point during those conversations with Adil Khan, do you know whether or not the issue of you and Matt having sex came up?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you tell him, if anything?
Told him that we had sex.
What types of things would you talk with Adil Khan about?
We talked about his day, my day, and Matt was a frequent subject.
What types of things would you discuss with Adil about Matt?
What he was doing, what he was talking about. Sometimes I'd express my concerns for Matt's health.
And what do you mean by Matt's health?
He would get very sad occasionally, and that concerned me.
Did you ever talk with Adil about Roger?
I think I mentioned to him that Matt mentioned it to me.
But did you get into anything in depth with Adil?
He asked me what I knew, and I said I didn't know anything.
Adil was the one to hook up Matt with his girlfriend Michelle, who knew Adil through his own girlfriend.
When you first met Matt, were you friends, or how quickly did you strike up a relationship?
I think we hung out for about a week before he asked me out.
And so from the summer of 2008 up until November of 2008, would you say it was constantly off and on, or how would you describe it?
We only broke up once, but it was for almost 2 weeks.
Can you tell the members of the jury the kind of person that Matt was?
He was a really fun-loving guy. You couldn't be around him and not have a good time.
What kinds of things would you say made him fun-loving?
He'd always make you smile just because.
Did he have a lot of friends?
I mean, he was friendly with everyone, but he generally only hung out with a few people at school.
You had said earlier that you had known Adil for a little while. Did you know Allegra?
I think I'd seen her around, but I never really talked to her. She didn't really approach anyone during breaks during school. She was kind of a loner. She was always off kind of in her own little world. Like, we'd try and introduce her into a topic even once I'd met her, and she just didn't seem interested in anything we had to say.
After you started dating Matt, did that change, or was she still somewhat of a loner?
She was still somewhat of a loner, but she actually tried to make an effort to hang out with us.
And why do you think that was, if you know?
I think she finally realized that she didn't feel included in our group and just wanted to hang out with us.
Okay.
Michelle was there when emergency services took Matt from his home after she saw his Facebook post. She said she had never heard him before say he seriously wanted to end it all, and that after he was released from Holly Hill, he regretted it, said he didn't want to be sad, and that he would turn his life around. Despite Matt's struggles, he was very popular, especially with the girls. Before his little rendezvous with Victoria in the DC area, which Michelle said she wasn't too pleased about, Matt became close friends with Adil's girlfriend and, for a 2-week period, was intimate with Allegra. Allegra told her boyfriend Ryan Hare that she wanted to take a break to explore her feelings for Matt.
Things had started happening between Matt and Allegra. Like, she'd randomly come up to him when we were hanging out at school, and they were just very secretive about what they were talking about, and it was a mutual kind of, I think I might like her kind of thing.
And so whose idea was it to take a break, for lack of a better word?
It was my idea,
And why was that?
because I didn't want to be in the middle of that. We both had too much stuff going on.
I had seen them making out in front of the house one day. One day Mary came home and Allegra was on top of Matt on the sofa.
I really liked him. I mean, him and I talked about pretty much anything and everything.
Tell me what kinds of things you would talk about.
We talked about horses a little bit because he knew a lot about horses. And then we talked about paintballing and video games.
Did you have some common interest with Matt?
Yeah,
When did you start text messaging Matt about feelings that you might have between each other?
it was in October because he started coming to my 4th period class with me. So we talked then.
And what was your 4th period class back then?
Honor Shakespeare.
Do you know what the situation with Matt and Michelle was in October when you were exploring your feelings for him?
That they had feelings for each other.
Were they still dating, do you know?
Not really not dating, but they would flirt with each other.
And how did that make you feel?
I was upset when I found out about it. But then I told Matt and I talked about it that he had feelings for Michelle more than me. And I had feelings for Ryan more than him.
And so what did you do when you had that conversation?
We talked about it and we said we still want to be friends, but we both knew a relationship between us wouldn't last very long.
How long would you say you were working through your feelings with Matt?
It was the end of October to early November.
After you had come to the mutual agreement that you should be friends, did you start dating Ryan again, or what did you do?
I was with Ryan again.
After that 2-week break, Matt and Michelle got back together when he was in Holly Hill. He then started confiding in her his concerns about Roger. It was the week of November 10 when the conversation emerged among the group.
Do you recall about when it was that the first time the situation with Roger or the conversation about Roger came up?
I don't remember when, but it was one day when we were all hanging out at Beaver Creek.
And is there a target there, that Beaver Creek?
Yes.
Who was there?
Ryan, Allegra, Adela, and myself, and Matt, I believe.
And who brought up the subject of Roger when you all were together?
Ryan, I think.
And do you recall what he said?
I think he just mentioned it jokingly until Matt took it more serious and said something about how it wasn't funny.
Do you recall, though, what he said about Roger?
He had said something along the lines of Roger had come into Firehouse Subs where Ryan was employed, and he just said that he was going to get Matt or something crazy that didn't make any sense.
And why didn't it make sense to you?
It just, no, Matt is such a guy that you couldn't be mad at him ever.
Did Ryan at that point give any explanation for why Roger would want to hurt Matt?
The subject was kind of dropped after that.
When was the last time you saw Matt?
Probably 2 days after he got back from D.C. That's when I gave him the money.
So he comes back from D.C. and you offer him $200 to go back to D.C. Why?
Roger.
Because of what?
Roger.
Who's Roger?
He's a guy that I'm afraid of.
But then it re-emerged on the 25th of November, the last time the Sillimans saw their son.
I had received a call, I believe it was from Adele, that asked me to meet them all at Blockbuster.
Do you have any idea about what time it was at this point?
Maybe about 7 or 8.
And did you go there?
Yes.
What happened when you went there?
I met up with all of them, and they informed me that Matt had to leave town for a little while because Roger was out to get him.
Were you surprised by that?
I was more confused than anything because the subject hadn't really been brought up that much.
Roger's guy.
Where's he at? Where do you see him at that he would creep the shit out of you?
He shows up when he wants to.
Where does he hang out at? Where does he live? Is he blackmail? What's
He's white. He's about 6 feet tall. He has difficult eye contact, and he changes his hair color and style pretty often. Probably daily. Not too bad.
So who does he hang with when you do come in contact with him?
He's usually by himself.
He just looked like he had been really frantic about something. His face was kind of red, and he seemed like he just wasn't happy. He said that Roger was out to get him, so they had made a video to fake his death to give to Roger, and that he had to leave town to make it seem like it was a plausible story.
Did he tell you about how they had faked his death?
I believe it was trying to strangle him.
When I first met Ryan, he told me Roger was this man he had done jobs for.
I basically just I guess he's putting me as recon.
So he wants you to go into places and scope it out.
Basically. I'm not sure exactly
What kind of places would he want you to go in and scope it out?
Things like Rite Aid, gas stations. We did a secret target.
Were you ever with him when he did any shoplifting?
Nope.
Did he introduce you to him?
No, he said he hadn't talked to him for a year.
And when was the next time that he talked about him coming back?
November.
And how did that come up in conversation?
Oh, we were, Matt, Adil, Michelle, and I were sitting in the Target parking lot in Apex, and Ryan got off of work, and he walked over there, and he pulled Adil and I to the side and said, "Roger's back."
I didn't recognize him,
Mm-hmm.
but it's rare that I do. He changes his looks pretty well.
What time of day does he visit you?
Just whenever he feels like. It's never a system. It's never the same time. It's just whenever he feels.
So he visits you at the firehouse someplace?
Yeah.
Does he do come in and order stuff, or he just walks
No,
in?
he walks in, goes to the right out in the camera blind spot, and sits down at the table there. And I went to wipe down the table that was across from it, and he said something to me, and I recognized his voice.
What did he say?
He asked me how I was doing. I said better.
Did he say why he was back or give you any details?
He said that Roger had come up to him, and he wanted him to do a job for him, and he would either give him $2,000 or take care of the Matt problem.
He asked me if I wanted work. I told him no.
Asked you to work, meaning what?
Meaning he wanted me to do something for him that would not be very legally advisable.
Ryan approached Allegra and Adil about Rogers' visit on November 15, conveying concern that the hitman wanted Matt taken care of because he allegedly had been telling people about the shadowy figure's activities. Ryan told the two that Roger had offered him $2,000 to eliminate Matt, but he declined. Roger then gave him an ultimatum: either kill Matt or I will kill you. Roger then told him he'd be back in 2 weeks. Unlike most of the other friends in this group, Ryan went to Panther Creek High School but was kicked out just months prior after firing a paintball gun at a school bus. Ryan had long maintained that it was Roger, who he said got upset with him when he wanted to break off their business relationship. Sarah Rayner was Ryan's girlfriend at the time.
I dated him a year.
From
July of 2007 to July of 2008.
do you have a lot of friends or?
Yeah, he's always been kind of a magnet for people to be around. Maybe just because of how interesting he is in terms of he seems to know a lot of stuff about just small bits of information that you wouldn't think you'd pick up in high school. We got like really close really fast, and it just seemed like it was like a clingy kind of relationship. He told me that he was in business with this man named Roger, and that he was trying to get out of business with Roger. Mainly, he said that he constructed what he called happy boxes, which were bombs that he would then have Roger sell, or they had some kind of business deal after that. He didn't really explain past that.
Ryan's life was said to have never been the same after the death of his friend Keto, the same friend he shared with Matt. In fact, he said he saw Keto being wheeled away from the home where he hung. The next day, Ryan checked into Holly Hill for depression. Now, instead of doing his honors classes at Panther Creek, the once promising student was working as a cashier at a Firehouse Subs in Apex. And it was across the street from this Firehouse Subs that Ryan told Adil and Allegra that they needed to figure something out. When Matt learned about the situation, he confided his fear with Adil, who took the information to Ryan. Allegra, who did not know why Roger wanted to hurt Matt, said Ryan confronted her about how Matt knew so much about Roger. She lied to him and said she didn't tell Matt, but Ryan didn't believe her because Matt knew too many details. Allegra said Ryan was upset with her, and she would convey that he, thereafter, had a hard time trusting her. It was now the week of November 17 when Ryan, Allegra, and Adil got together to discuss the situation. Ryan then opened up about a sacrifice he was willing to make.
He just said that he guessed he would have to sacrifice himself.
And what was your reaction to that?
That I said no, I didn't want him to. He said he didn't see what choice he had because he didn't want to take out Matt. I didn't want Ryan to sacrifice himself because I told him I cared more for him than I did for Matt.
And was that the truth?
I think I cared about them the same, but I wanted Ryan to feel the same about me as I did him. I believed Ryan was the only thing in my life that I had, and I loved him basically more than everything.
Ryan then went to Matt personally, and the two spoke about the Roger situation. When he wasn't on his medication, Matt found himself falling back into those dark places. Matt agreed to take himself out, but he had two stipulations: that he get 2 more weeks of life, and that his death not look self-inflicted, so that his parents could get some life insurance money. But by the time Matt got back from DC on November 23, the other 3 had already planned something entirely different.
We started making a plan.
And when you say we, who is involved at this point?
Adil, Ryan, and I.
And what did you guys decide to do?
To suffocate Matt with a zip tie. I think the zip tie came from Ryan because he liked zip ties. Ryan rigged 2 of them together so that it would be long enough to go over Matt's head. Yeah, he practiced on Adil.
And where did you guys do this?
In my car.
During the time that you were practicing with the deal, did anyone take photographs, do you know?
Not while we were practicing, but of Ryan and I playing with zip ties.
Who took the photographs?
Adil.
Anything of significance that you can recall happened during the day on November 25th?
Allegra had said that she needed help getting some horse feed in Siler City.
Who was in the car when you picked Matt up?
It was just me.
And where did Matt get in the car with you?
At his house.
What had you told Matt before he got in the car on the 25th?
That we needed to talk about our relationship and that I needed to get something from Siler City and I wanted him to help me.
And when you say our relationship, whose did you mean?
Matt's and I, about how we felt for each other still.
Did you give him any indication when you initially talked to him about whether or not anyone else would be getting in the car?
No.
Okay. After you picked Matt up, what happened?
Adil text messaged my phone saying he was having a problem with his parents, and I asked Matt if we could pick him up, and he said, yeah, that's fine, because I know Adil is having some trouble at home.
And did you do that?
Yeah.
And when you went to Adil's house, who else was there, if anyone?
Ryan.
What happened when you got to Adil's house?
They got in the car and Ryan said, you didn't say Matt would be here, and I said, you didn't say you'd be with Adil.
Was that something you had already planned out?
Yes. Matt was in the front passenger seat, Ryan was behind him, and Adil was behind me. We got on Highway 64, heading towards Siler City.
What had the plan been?
When we get to a desolate part of the highway, Ryan would pull it over Matt's neck when a certain time on a song came up. And then after that, he would move Matt to the back seat. Adil was to tase Matt with a taser if he tried to do anything.
When did you have a taser in the car?
Yes.
Where did that come from?
Adil and I went to the mall to buy it. We pulled off on a side road on one of the exits, and we were just driving down the road, and that song was on, but I don't know if anything happened at the exact time, but Ryan put the zip tie over Matt's neck and pulled on it.
And what was Matt wearing?
I think Matt was wearing a black hoodie.
What happened when Ryan put the zip tie around his neck?
Matt started choking, and he had a knife and he was trying to cut the zip tie off.
Did Matt usually have a knife?
Yeah.
And what happened when he tried to cut it off?
I took the knife from him.
And why did you do that?
So that he wouldn't cut it off.
Was he saying anything?
He said, for God's sake, help me.
And did anyone help him?
He started to pull on the door handle and I pulled over And he turned around and he said, "I swear I didn't tell anybody anything."
Had he said that in response to a question, or he just said that out loud?
He just said it.
What happened after Matt said that?
Adil said that we were faking your death because Roger was following us. And he had told Matt that Roger had contacted him too. I think after that we kind of just sat there for a minute until Ryan cut the zip tie off of Matt's neck.
After the zip tie was cut off, could you see anything on his neck?
He had red marks on his neck.
Did Adil ever use the taser?
He tried, but the taser was dead.
Did Matt ever open the door? You said he had tried to open the door.
He started to open it and I pulled over so that he wouldn't jump out while the car was moving.
And after they took the zip tie off his neck, what did you guys do?
We said that we had to get him out of town.
And what was his response, Matt's response?
He agreed with it. He wanted to get his stuff and say goodbye to Michelle.
After you had just tried to kill him, why did he get back in the car with you?
Because he trusted us.
Did Matt have a cell phone?
He did, but we broke it so that he wouldn't be able to use it, but then it wouldn't be able to be tracked. He called Michelle from, I think, Adil's cell phone to tell her to meet us at one of the shopping centers by Matt's house.
He had like a red scratch around his neck.
Did he tell you how long he was going to be out of town?
He didn't really say, but he knew it was probably going to be past Christmas. I was just crying, trying to understand what was going on.
And during that time frame, what are you telling him?
It was mostly him trying to comfort me, along with the fact that he thought he had to leave, and I knew there was nothing I could do to stop it. It was all of them basically reassuring me that he was going to be fine, and he just needed to leave town for a little while.
Did they tell you where he was going to go?
He was supposed to go to Allegra's house for the night and then catch a train in the morning. He basically said that Adil was going to tell me that he was out and that he was okay. And that he didn't know if he was going to be able to talk to me after that. He looked more confident about it now that his friends were there to reassure him.
And so do you know about what time it was that was the last time you saw him?
Probably 9:30, not quite 10.
And where did you go after that?
I got a drink and went home.
Did you ever see Matt again?
Nope.
Drew Logan Shaw.
How do you know Ryan Hare?
We lived in the same neighborhood together. I think I met him in like 3rd or 4th grade. We weren't going to the same school, but I met him at the neighborhood. For the most part, like really, we were a lot like brothers, like really close.
On November 9, 2008, a couple of weeks before the car strangulation incident, 16-year-old Drew Shaw snuck his parents' car out of the driveway and drove some friends to do drugs. After dropping them off just before dawn, he was driving back to his house when he understeered the car off the road.
I tried to call the friend who I had just dropped off to come and drive me to my house and have him walk home because I crashed the car like a block away from the house. But trying to do that, he wasn't answering, so the phone went dead. So I had to run all the way to my house and use a house phone to call Ryan. And so we met up at the front of the neighborhood, and we power walked over to where the car was, and he drove it back to my house. You know, it was really big to me because I really needed it, so I'm like, you know, if you need your help, like, I'll kill somebody for you, you know.
Mr. Shaw, were you serious that you would kill somebody for Mr. Hare? Or...
No, it was just an exaggeration.
The next day, Monday the 10th of November, Drew is standing outside his house when Adil and Ryan walk over.
Basically, him and Adil, they came up to me and they're just like, hey, remember that favor you owe me from yesterday? Yeah, and I don't remember the exact words, but they're just like, more or less, we're cashing in on that favor.
Mr. Shaw, at this point, did you take Mr. Hare's comment about wanting to kill Matt Silliman seriously?
No, sir.
And at that point, he didn't give you any reasons why he wanted it done?
No, there was no motive or anything.
Okay. And no comments as to we'll be back in 2 days to do it or anything like that?
No, sir.
Just kind of dropped it at that point?
Right.
A couple of days later, on the 13th of November, Ryan comes over to Drew's house. Drew was smoking with his other friend when Ryan again raised the idea of killing someone. The three then went over some ways they would do the deed. While Drew said he and his other friend were joking, Ryan was more serious. Drew then raised the possibility of getting Matt high enough so he would pass out, which would give Ryan an easier time to suffocate him. Ryan gave Drew some money to get the weed.
He said a deal. He's gonna have, basically all he wanted me to do was get drugs and allow Matt to spend the night at my house. And just, like, that was my involvement in his plan. And he said, him and a deal were gonna come and pick Matt up.
The next day, the 14th of November, Drew picked up half an ounce of the drug and went back to his place.
He said something about he and Adil had tried and failed, and I asked him what he meant, and he said the night that I dropped him off at Drew's to get high with Drew, him and Adil were gonna try something.
And who did you drop off at Drew's?
I dropped off Matt, and Adil and Ryan were with me.
And so who stayed at Drew's house?
Matt stayed at Drew's.
Then they left Matt at my house with Olay and I, and after that we just hang out, ate a little bit. Then the three of us, Matt, Olay, and I, we went out and we got this little shed in behind my house, and we went and smoked in there, conversating about nothing. Actually, mostly the weed. We were kind of complaining because we're like, I don't know, like when we got it, trying to get dirt cheap weed, but he kind of gave us like cheap dirt weed. It really sucked. It was like it hurt smoking it. Had a lot of seeds in it too, so there wasn't as much weed as there should have been. So we were just kind of complaining about that.
Matt smoking along with you?
Yeah.
He having a good time?
Everyone's just cheesing out, laughing a lot. Like that's just what happens when you smoke.
Does he ever go unconscious?
No.
Matt doesn't get high enough to pass out. The buds may have been cheesing out, but Ryan wasn't, and that's because the plan failed. Then came the 25th of November, the night of the strangulation attempt and 2 days before Thanksgiving, when Ryan went over to Drew's house. But Drew was at his friend Amber's place. Ryan tried calling Drew multiple times to assist the group with the Matt problem.
She asked me why he kept calling, and I was like, he wants me to go with him so he can kill this guy. And she was just like, well, let him do it himself. Just not, she wasn't being serious, but.
Did you take Mr. Shaw back to Apex?
Not until 7 o'clock on the 26th.
Why didn't you take him back to Apex on the night of the 25th?
Because he didn't want to go. He wanted to spend time with me because we hadn't seen each other in like 2 weeks.
Miss Howe, did you give Mr. Shaw any advice on how he should handle this situation?
I did, which I rather regret because I assumed it was the usual, when somebody says, we got to get this guy, usually with high school students, it means, you're going to try to beat them up or something. And I told him, the next time Ryan calls, why don't you tell him to man up and do it himself if this kid is such a problem for him? I had no idea that Mr. Hare intended to kill Mr. Silliman.
For the rest of the group on the night of the 25th, after the first strangulation attempt, the plan was to get Matt's stuff from his house and then take him to Allegra's second property in New Hill until they could figure out how to get him out of town.
At this point, Allegra, did you believe that you were going to get Matt out of town?
After that, I thought we would, because when nothing happened in the car, and Ryan and I we'd stopped at Ryan's house first, and I'd asked if they were just pretending the whole time, and they weren't really gonna do anything. And when he said no, Matt's hood got in the way, but we're gonna get him out of town, I thought we were gonna get him out of town.
And how were you going to get him out of town?
We were gonna probably put him on a train.
And who all went out to the New Hill property?
Adil, Ryan, and I.
Didn't Matt seem happy or scared or afraid? How would you describe his demeanor as you're going out to the property?
He was just serious. He sat there quietly and seriously.
After the incident in your car, between the time you left there and went to your house, did you tell Matt that you were going to kill him?
No.
Did you ever hear Ryan tell Matt that he was going to kill him between the time you stopped the incident in your car and you got to the house?
No.
And what about Adil?
No.
When you got to the property, what, if anything, did you guys talk about?
We just went inside and I told Matt where he could put his stuff and that we would come back tomorrow to bring him bottled water and food.
Why did you decide to take him to your property rather than taking him home?
Because nobody goes out there.
But why couldn't he wait at home to get him out of town? Why did you want him in a place where no one goes?
Because they said, well, Adil had said that we were faking his death because Roger was following us, so Matt couldn't be seen anywhere.
So you said you called Michelle and Allegra, and what'd they tell you about where, if they knew where Matt was on the day of the 26th?
They had no idea at all.
Who called your cell phone?
I think it was Mrs. Silliman.
And what, if any, conversation did you have with her?
If I knew where Matt was, and I said the last time I saw him is that I dropped him off outside my car outside Apex High School.
Allegra dropped Matt off at 7? 7-ish. When was this?
That's what she told me.
Officer Hell, can you tell the members of the jury a little bit about how you came into contact with the Sillimans on, I believe it was the evening of November 26, 2008?
Yes, sir. Had a call for service, being asked to go to the Silliman's address in reference to a report of them wanting to report a missing person being their son. He had some trouble in the past and had some issues with mental illness, and they were concerned maybe he wasn't on his medication. And just the way he had left out of the house, he'd come home, gone upstairs, and gone back out, and the last that he said was, "I need to go give this to someone in the car," or a guy in the car, or something to that effect.
What time that next day, that being the 26th, would you say it was that you went out?
I think it was maybe around noon.
And did you go by yourself?
No, Ryan and Adil went with me.
And what, if anything, did you do when you got out there?
Oh, checked on Matt to see how it had been that night and showed him what we brought. And he said that there was food and stuff to drink out there that he could make.
How would you describe his demeanor? Was he okay?
He seemed fine. He said it was kind of fun being by himself.
How long would you say you stayed there at the property with Matt on that Wednesday, the three of you?
No more than an hour.
And what about the next day? Did you go back out on Thanksgiving?
I went out that night.
During Thanksgiving Day, what, if anything, did you do?
I pet sit. I said goodbye to Ryan before he went to go see his family.
Where were you at out of town?
Myrtle Beach. Thursday, late morning, we left. And late on Friday, we started heading back.
And when you went out that evening to the property, do you know about what time it was?
I'm not exactly sure, maybe around 7. It had been after my mom and grandma and I had had dinner.
Was it dark outside or was it light, if you remember?
It was dark.
And did you see Matt?
No.
Were you worried about that?
I went in and I called his name, but there was no answer and I didn't see him, so I called Ryan and Adil and said I didn't know where Matt was.
To be clear, Matt was still inside the property, but Allegra couldn't see him because he barricaded himself in the bedroom. Matt, apparently, was worried about being seen from the outside, presumably out of fear of Roger.
And when you didn't see him that night, did you leave?
Yeah.
What happened on Friday?
On Friday, Adil and I went out at about 10 in the morning to go see where Matt was.
During either Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, had you had any more conversation with Matt about getting him out of town?
Yeah, we asked where he wanted to go, and he said his brother lived in Florida and he could go down there.
What about how you were going to make that happen? Like, were you making plans about how to get him to Florida?
I asked where his brother lived, and I looked up train times to see where the closest city was to the train station and what times.
When you had talked to Matt about getting him out of town, had he wanted to talk to his family?
He wrote a note to his parents and Michelle saying that he would be back in a year.
And whose idea was that?
Ryan.
And why did Ryan want him to write that note?
So that they would know that he was okay, or just assume he was if something happened. Adil and I had him write the note while we were out there.
And what happened to those notes?
They were in my car, and last I gave them to Ryan so my mom wouldn't see him, and I didn't see him after that.
At some point, did you know about the silver alert that had been issued for Matt's disappearance?
On Thanksgiving morning.
I believe you said you were asked to call Adil Khan.
I believe I did, just very briefly, and nobody knew where he was.
And then Ryan Hare. Did you call Mr. Hare?
Mm-hmm.
Did you speak with Mr. Hare?
I believe I did, and again, he didn't know either.
Miss Silliman, after you made these phone calls at the request of Officer Hell, what'd you do then, ma'am?
We discussed the silver alert, and then he said he would put it out right away and keep us informed if they heard anything. Okay. It didn't make any sense why he wouldn't be coming back, so I was just real nervous.
So you went to bed on the 26th, still hadn't heard from Matt.
Right. I did get onto the computer and noticed that everything had been deleted because I wanted to get on and see if there was something on there. All of the chat logs were gone.
Drew said he got a call from Ryan at around 10 p.m. on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving and after he returned from Myrtle Beach, telling him about the attempt on Matt's life in Allegra's car that Tuesday. Drew said during the week, he did not know that Matt was declared missing, didn't try calling Matt because he didn't have his phone number, and didn't tell police about what Ryan told him about that Tuesday because the whole story didn't seem real to him. What Drew said he also didn't know was that the rest of the group ditched the plan to get Matt out of town, opting instead for the more extreme option.
Allegra, at some point, did it become clear to you that there was not a plan to get Matt out of town?
Yeah.
And when did that come clear to you?
It became clear on that Saturday, I believe, later.
And why was that? Like, why did you realize that that was not the plan?
Because when Ryan, Adil, and I were leaving after we saw Matt, it was asked, how long did we trust him to stay out of town? And I think Adil said maybe a few months, and Ryan said maybe a few weeks.
Do you know who asked that question, how long we can trust him?
I think it might have been Adil.
And when Ryan said maybe a couple weeks, what happened?
Basically, that's when everyone, I guess, assumed there was going to be a plan then, since we couldn't trust Matt to stay away. And that if he came back, then Roger would do something.
And so when they said we needed to do something, was there a conversation about what that was?
Not really.
But they also had another problem with sneaking him out of town. They simply couldn't, because ticket purchases require ID, which would have tipped transportation officials because there was an outstanding silver alert. Now, the kids were in a bind. Drew went with Ryan, Adil, and Allegra to a sporting goods shop where they would purchase equipment in preparation for Sunday, November 30.
Victoria, I want to turn your attention to Sunday, November 30th. Do you recall of 2008? Do you recall that date, ma'am?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Me and Drew had decided to just hang out for the day because his family was having Thanksgiving together since a lot of his family was scattered out across on the actual day of Thanksgiving, so they wanted to have as much as the family that they could on that day. The dinner was supposed to be around 6.
Approximately what time did you come into contact with Mr. Hare?
Between 4:30 and 5.
Who was Mr. Hare with at the time?
Allegra and Adil.
Why did you go to Drew's?
To pick Drew up, take him with us to my property.
Prior to the 30th, had you yourself had a conversation with Drew about getting him involved?
No.
Do you know who had been in contact with Drew?
Ryan.
And when you went to pick up Drew, do you know about what time it was at this point?
Maybe around 5 or 6.
Who was at Drew's house?
His girlfriend.
And who is that?
I think her name was Vicky.
Me and Drew were upstairs listening to some music, and Carol, Drew's mom, had answered the door and then yelled for Drew. And she wasn't too happy because we were supposed to be having a holiday family get-together, and Drew didn't even know why they were there. Like, he just yelled out, "Who's here?" And Ryan whispered something to Drew, but Drew just shook him off, and then he said, "I'm not going anywhere." And he was like, I'm here hanging out with Victoria and I'm going to stay with her. I'm not just going to leave my girlfriend like that. Well, they had said that they were going to go play paintball. Ryan and Allegra had invited me to go play paintball with them as well. And at first I was like, that'd be really fun. I've never played paintball. And luckily I was sitting there thinking, and I was like, all right, my father doesn't know any of these people besides Drew. And he wouldn't be too happy if I left with people that he didn't know. So I just said that I would stay home, and that is when Drew said that he would also stay home with me. I was like, I have no problem staying here. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, I'm positive. And then he got up and he asked me again if I was sure, and I was like, stop asking me, just go. And then he gave me a kiss, and then he went back to the main entranceway with Ryan and Allegra.
And then the next thing I remember is Allegra or somebody said they needed water so she could mix something with a syringe.
I was supposed to have the the horse medication.
And what kind of medication is that?
It's a pain reliever for horses.
And what were you going to do with the Butte?
See if it would slow Matt down, just drug him up.
Did you talk about how you would give him the Butte?
Put it in syringes.
Did you try, in fact, to put the Butte in the syringes?
Yeah.
And when did you do that?
At Drew's house.
And did that work?
No.
During this time, Ryan and Adil were at the car. And Allegra was off towards Ryan, but she wasn't completely next to him. And then in that point, Ryan had pulled something out of the car, which turned out to be very long zip ties.
Okay.
At that time, Ryan had said, we just have to go get Matt. And shortly after, in response, Adil had said, this is going to be so much fun. I just assumed it was about paintball.
Cause I'm just scared as hell.
Why are you scared, Mr. Shaw?
It's like real.
I guess the way to put it is everything started like manifesting itself.
Were you still driving down the road when Mr. Harris started telling everyone what to do?
Yeah, but like while we're driving, it's just a short little drive from that community. So he was only talking about that. We're on the road like 30 seconds, and then we pull up in the driveway at the property, and we just stay in the car. We're all like just sitting in the car, and he's going over everything. He told me to wait at the corner of the house with a baseball bat in case Matt tried to run and to keep him from running. I was supposed to wait in the car till Adil came back out and came to get some like a printed out AIM conversation, and then I was supposed to get out of the car.
I went in the house with Ryan and Adil. I had the syringes in my pocket, and I think Adil had the taser.
Who was wearing gloves?
Ryan, Adil, and I.
Was Matt inside the house?
Yes.
Do you remember what he was doing?
He'd been watching a movie and drinking wine.
Was he happy, sad? How would you describe him?
He was all right, and he was just talking about that there was a lot of food that he could make out there. I had put the syringes on a counter that were in the house.
And here I'm showing just some like medicine bottles and also a syringe lying on. This is actually back in the kitchen area. And this apparently another syringe. And I'm just documenting those items.
And Ryan had picked up a hammer, but I remember I shook my head at him and he put it back down.
And why did you shake your head?
Because I didn't want him to use the hammer.
So prior to going into the house, had anyone talked about hitting over the head with a hammer?
I think it had been mentioned as an idea, but I don't know if it had actually been decided on.
And so, did he put the hammer down?
Yeah.
And what happened next?
I know that's when Adil went outside to go get the conversation between Victoria and Matt.
And when Adil went outside, what were you doing?
I was standing there with Ryan and Matt.
From the time that he went to the house on the 25th up until that date, had you ever finalized any sort of plans to get him out of town on a train or on a bus, on a plane, any of those things?
Nothing was ever finalized.
And so while you were talking about the movie, do you know what Adil was doing?
He was outside letting Drew out of the car and getting the conversation.
And did he bring the conversation in?
Yeah.
And what happened when Adil came back inside?
He gave it to Matt to read.
What was his reaction when you guys told him that you knew what he'd been doing?
He got quiet and serious.
So what happened next?
I think I think he'd brought up that if I wanted to read Matt's tarot cards with Matt there in person, for me to do it.
This is there's a pack of tarot cards on the kitchen counter. I zoomed down that they were out of place. They're just seemed a weird place for some tarot cards to be.
As part of the briefing that you attended, were you made aware of any tarot cards to be looked for?
Yeah, I recall something. I don't remember specifically what, but I remember the tarot cards were mentioned.
And what do you mean by read him in person?
I had read his cards for him once before when he wasn't there.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay. And when did you do his tarot reading when he wasn't there?
On November 23rd. You lay out the cards in a certain spread, and when you turn the card over, there will be a certain picture and a certain suit, and it will describe, according to its position laid out, what it means to your life.
So tell me where he was when you were doing the tarot cards on the 23rd.
We were waiting for him to get off the train.
And so when he got off the train, is that when you told him?
When we got in the car and started driving back towards Apex.
And what, if anything, did you tell him about what the tarot cards had said?
I told him that it said, don't trust those closest to you.
Please state your name.
Worth Brown.
And how are you employed?
I'm a detective with the Apex Police Department. I was out in the field. I was working on another case when my sergeant called me and asked me to return to the police department because there had been a possible development in the Silliman missing person case. A teenager had reportedly made a statement about murdering Matthew Silliman to his grandmother.
I can't remember exactly. All I know is that I told her that I killed Matt with a baseball bat.
Is that what happened?
No.
Why did you tell her that?
Basically, I don't know. Just trying to. Basically, I don't want to be snitching on people, because I'm just an idiot. Trying to get them, basically, call the police on me.
And when he told you it wasn't true, what did you guys decide to do?
Well, we asked him, why he would make this comment. And he said he didn't know, and then he said he did it to just push his grandmother's buttons to see if he could get a rise out of her, and to test her loyalty, to see if he told her this, would she be loyal to him and keep it secret, or would she report him to somebody.
Detective Brown said Drew took them on a wild goose chase, claiming that they had been making paintball forts that night. And then when there was no evidence showing that, told them that he had broken a bong, which they could also not find.
He needed to give us something to make him appear credible. And it was at that point that I suggested a CVSA, a computerized voice stress analysis, to him. It's a computer program that measures the amount of FM frequency in a person's voice. And based on the amount of FM frequency, you can determine whether a person is under stress or not, and relate that to whether they're being deceptive with you or not. He wouldn't even let me finish explaining what it was before he was volunteering to take it. When I asked him, do you know who murdered Matthew Silliman? He immediately answered no. When I asked him, did you murder Matthew Silliman? He immediately answered no. And when I asked him, do you suspect someone of murdering Matthew Silliman? He hesitated before he answered.
And what did he say?
Well, I asked him why he hesitated, and instead of giving me an immediate no, as he had the other questions. And I told him that if he hesitated, he must know something, or he must suspect someone if he had to hesitate before he answered the question. And almost immediately, he became very, very upset, started crying, and then pretty much told me he did suspect someone of murdering Matthew.
Adil, he came out and got me out of the car, grabbed some papers out of, how the back of a car seat's got that little flap thing. He grabbed them out of there. And I got out of the car with the baseball bat and went and waited at the corner. I'm just waiting some amount of time, probably about 10-15 minutes, sitting there kind of thinking, kind of freaking out.
We went into the kitchen where there was a little table so that I could spread the cards out on the table and put a stool in front of the cabinet so Matt could sit down. Ryan moved closer to the counter to where Matt was sitting. I was looking in the booklet for what every card meant.
And what do you mean looking in the booklet?
There's a booklet that tells you what every card means so that you can tell someone else and teach yourself.
And while you're looking through the book, what happened?
Ryan moved closer to Matt and he looked at a box of saltines on the top of the counter and started talking to Adil about it. And I saw that Ryan had the hammer in his hand, and when I saw that, I turned my head away and I bent over looking at the book, and then I heard him hit Matt in the head with it.
What happened after you heard him hit him?
I looked up and Matt was just sitting there and Ryan was holding the hammer and he said, "You're not dead."
Did he seem surprised?
And kinda, yeah.
And what did Matt say, if anything?
He didn't really say anything, he just gave Ryan a really dirty look. I think that's when it was brought up that basically Matt had to die.
And who brought that up?
I'm not exactly sure. I think it was, I guess, between all three of us, Adil, Ryan, and I, that he has a choice. Either he can do it or it can be done for him. What way would he be killed? And it was by suffocation.
Who said it would be by suffocation?
Ryan.
And what did Matt say about that?
That he was scared of that.
And did he tell you why?
Because his friend Keto died that way.
And when he was told suffocation, what did he do?
He decided he would take medications and overdose himself.
Why did you all tell him that he had to die?
Because of Roger. Matt walked over and started picking up bottles. He chose which ones he would take, and he was drinking wine while he was doing it. I had told Adil at that point to go outside and get Drew.
He came out, I think what he said was he wanted me to come inside the house and told me, you know, come on in, like the plans changed, you don't got to do anything, just leave the bat, come inside, everything's all right, Matt knows you're here. You know, he told me that Ryan had hit Matt in the back of the head, and Matt he didn't move, it didn't seem to bother him, like in the way that like he didn't react like that. And he just said, you know, the plan has changed, they convinced him to kill himself is what he told me.
Did you go in the house?
Yes.
What did you see when you went in the house?
So everyone's standing in the kitchen, and Matt, he's standing there. He's shaking like he got pill bottles in his hand. He's literally he's just shaking like that. And he was reading that the sheets of paper that Adil had given him from the car. He's just reading those and just.
What happened when you saw Mr. Silliman?
Well, I went in, I gave him a hug. I was like, I don't know, what's up? I think basically everyone else was talking about what had happened about Ryan hitting Matt in the back of the head with the hammer. And so Matt, he showed me, took his hat off, he's wearing a hat. And I was just kind of like, I don't know, for some reason I just kind of like touched it. Like not the wound, just like where the blood was. Just because he was showing me, and I got blood on my hand. And so Ryan told me to go wash it off at the sink, and that's what I did. And I saw the hammer there at the sink that he had hit him with. Just washed my hands off.
I think he said something about he must be a juggalo because juggalos don't die.
And did you know what a juggalo was?
The best definition I could say was it's a fan of the band ICP.
How long would you say, well, did Matt decide to take any of the medicine, or what did he do?
He took some of it, and he drank wine, and he also took some of the horse butte.
And how did he know about that?
Because we brought it up that we had it with us. He poured it in his wine and drank it. I was standing there in the kitchen until we all went to the porch.
Did any of the three of you, before you went to the porch, try and stop what was happening?
No.
Why did you guys go out on the porch?
Sit outside so Matt could smoke cigarettes.
Mr. Shaw, why did these comments that Mr. Hare made to Mr. Silliman upset you so bad the night of, and then again here in the courtroom today?
It's because, like, man, I don't know, like, he's just talking to Matt, and it just seemed like you could tell that he was trying to put him down, you know, like, basically, like, you know, trying to keep convincing him to, like, be depressed, and trying to get him to take them pills and drink and shit, you know, just, like, giving him motivation, like, fuel for the fire and shit. Fucking pissed me off, because, like, you know, it was hurtful shit.
What was Mr. Hare's reaction when you told him that you'd had enough of him?
He just got quiet. He didn't, like, I don't know, he got quiet. A couple minutes later, he's like, well, you know, he said I could go home.
At this point, you know that Matt's been hit in the head with a hammer, that he's drinking this stuff. Why didn't you run? Or why didn't you have Matt run with you?
Like, I don't know. It's just like, I don't know, it's kind of, well, for one, I'm kind of fucking scared. Like,
Why are you scared?
It's just everyone, because I don't know what anyone's thinking. Like, I don't know how serious everything is. I'm like, if I make any kind of move, you know, like, if I tried to get up, if I fucking grab that, sorry, if I grab that baseball bat and it was just like, Matt's going home, you know what I'm saying? I feel like, I don't know, they might have had killed me or something.
They're admitted for less purposes.
We had this monitor to set up the
Projector, they'll probably see Matt.
Take
Who took you home?
Allegra.
You talked to Matt before you left?
Yeah.
What'd you say to Matt before you left?
Like when he did the handshake, you know, I kind of held it, you know, had eye contact, like trying to communicate, like do something. Like, I don't know. Basically, like I gave him the handshake, look him in the eye, kind of like, you know, if you do anything, man, I'm behind you. Like, if you jump up, like I got you, but he didn't get it.
What are you and Miss Dahlquist talking about on the way back to your house, sir?
Nothing actually. Really, it's just like we weren't saying anything. It was just kind of like an awkward silence for the most part.
When Drew came back, did you see any, paint on him or anything like that that looked like
I really wasn't looking at his clothes. I had turned open the door and turned away, and he kissed me on my cheek, and then ran up the stairs. He came back down while I was helping his mom set the table.
Did you and Drew talk about at any point during the night where he'd been and what he'd been doing?
Yes, sir. Well, not exactly what he was doing, but we did talk.
When you came back, where was he?
On the porch.
And who was with him, if anyone, at that point?
Ryan and Adil. We stood there and Matt started talking to us about saying he was sorry and he wanted to give us all a hug, and I can't remember exactly everything he said though.
Well, did he tell you what he was sorry about?
About that he'd messed everything up and that he was hurting everybody. He gave us all a hug, but Ryan didn't want to hug him, but he let him. When I first got back, he wasn't reacting until maybe 10 minutes later.
And what did you notice at that point?
He basically, I guess, he started to act drunk. He was just kind of rambling about nothing, really. Then he closed his eyes and he leaned back like he was going to sleep.
And what did you guys do at that point?
Ryan moved towards him so that we could move him into the house.
And why did you want to move him in the house?
So that no one would see him outside.
Whose idea was it to move him inside?
Ryan.
And where did you take him?
When Ryan went to get him, well, first, when we moved him, Matt started to wake up a little bit.
And did he say anything?
He looked at Ryan and he said, "Fuck you, Ryan."
Did he say anything else or just that?
He kept repeating that.
Were you ultimately able to get him inside the house?
Yes.
And what happened when you got him inside? Where'd you take him?
To the back bedroom.
Did they carry him or was he walking? How did that go?
They carried him
And the back bedroom, where had Matt been staying, if you know, while he was there?
in the back bedroom.
How could you tell he was staying there?
His sleeping bag and all his stuff was in there.
And what happened when you carried him into the back bedroom?
Ryan and Adil laid him on the floor.
Was he still cursing at Ryan, or what was he doing at that point?
He was quiet.
Okay. And what did you guys do once you got back to the back bedroom?
We started going through his stuff.
And why did you do that?
To see what he had brought with him.
What was the purpose of looking to see what he had with him?
For identification purposes.
And what were you going to do with it?
Throw it away.
Whose idea was that?
Ryan.
And was Matt doing anything at this point?
No, but he was quiet, but his arms started to seize up.
And what do you mean by his arms started to seize up?
They started to bend and move in towards his chest.
And what did you do?
Zip tied his hands so they wouldn't move.
Whose idea was that?
Ryan.
Why didn't you want his hands to move?
So that they would just stay in one place.
How did you go about zip tying his hands?
Ryan held his wrist still, and I put the zip tie over his wrist.
Where did the zip ties come from?
Ryan had them.
Did he have them on his person, or where did he have to go get them?
I think they were in his jacket.
After the zip ties were put on his arms, what happened next?
Ryan put zip ties around his ankles. Adil found duct tape in Matt's stuff and put it over Matt's mouth.
And why did he do that?
So that if Matt went into shock, he wouldn't start yelling.
And whose idea was that?
Adil. We moved him towards the bathroom on the other side of the house.
How did you move him?
First, Adil and Ryan started to move him, and I think they were dragging him on a sleeping bag.
You said at first, did that change?
Yeah, because they stopped and then Ryan had me take his place, so Adil and I were moving Matt.
Why were you moving him?
To a room with no windows.
Whose idea was that?
Ryan.
Why didn't you want him to be in a room with windows?
That if somebody went by, they wouldn't see him anywhere.
And so were you pulling him, pushing him? How was that? What were you doing?
I think I was pushing.
And what was Ryan doing?
He was walking next to us.
And what happened? Where did you take him?
Into the bathroom.
What happened when you got in the bathroom?
Matt started coughing, and he was gonna get sick. And Ryan told Adil to go get a bag, and Adil went out of the room, and he got a plastic bag, and Matt threw up in the bag.
How did the bag get to where Matt could throw up in it?
We put it in front of him because we sat him up, and he threw up.
So you actually sat him up and he threw up. What about the duct tape?
It was still in his mouth.
How was he able to throw up with the duct tape on his mouth?
It came from under the duct tape.
What happened next?
We put the bag over his head.
Who put the bag over his head?
Ryan and I.
And whose idea was that?
Ryan's.
What happened after he put it over his head?
So Matt's hood on his hoodie wouldn't get in the way of the zip tie. We were gonna cut the hood away from his neck.
And did you do that?
Yeah.
When you got, after you were working with the hoodie, what did you do?
Ryan handed me a zip tie, and I put it over his neck. And I pulled it, but I couldn't get it on all the way.
And so what did you do?
I went out of the bathroom with the deal, and Ryan came out a few minutes later saying he had pulled the zip tie tighter.
Why did you put the zip tie around Matt's neck?
Because Ryan wanted me to.
Allegra, why did you pull that zip tie around his neck? Because Ryan wanted you to.
Because I wanted to get his trust back, and if I would do it for him, he would trust me again.
But I thought you cared about Matt.
I wanted Ryan more.
After Ryan told you that, what did you do? After Ryan told you that he tightened the zip tie, what did you do?
We went back in the bathroom and put Matt in his sleeping bag.
At this point, what was Matt doing?
He wasn't doing anything.
Do you know after the time that he threw up in the bag if he continued to throw up?
I don't think he did.
And when you put him in the sleeping bag, what happened?
We zipped up the sleeping bag and moved it farther back in the bathroom.
What did you do after that?
We moved stuff around so it would look like there was just clutter in the bathroom.
And why did you do that?
So that if anyone had gone there, they wouldn't think anything of it.
Whose idea was it to put the clutter on?
Right.
At this point, was Matt, could you hear anything from Matt?
No.
Could you see anything?
No.
At the minute that you put tie around Matt's neck, how long had it been, excuse me, after Matt had vomited that you put the zip tie around his neck?
Only a couple minutes. Yeah.
At any point from when you guys walked into that house with your car, did you try and stop what's happening?
No.
Did you know that the plan on November 30th was to kill Matt? And whose idea was to kill Matt?
Ryan.
Actually, Michelle called me that night, the night that they found Matt. That would have been the 2nd.
Okay.
And she said, "What's happening?" She said, "Allegra and Adil are being questioned or something like that." And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
The day they reported that they had found a body, I was at school, and it just started circulating around the school, and the guidance counselors came and got me before I could leave.
And when you first met with the police officers, were you honest about what you knew?
I wasn't.
Why not?
Because they were my friends and I trusted them.
What didn't you tell them?
I didn't tell them the last time I saw Matt.
Did you at any point when Matt left you on Tuesday night have any idea that they were going to kill Matt?
No.
During that week before Matt's body was found, did you have any idea that they had harmed Matt?
No.
You got any idea where Matt's at?
I thought you guys had found him rough back while I was here.
Thought we had found him. Where do you think we would have found him?
Probably up in Washington, D.C. or down in Florida. And that's not why I'm here, why I'm not here. You would have told the whole story, and me and everyone else trying to help him get out of town.
Do you have a strong animosity against Matt that you would do something to him or would want him hurt?
I was happy. I was happy to send him away, but I'm not the type of person to hurt someone.
You were happy to send him away.
We made contact with these families and had the cons first come down to the police department. I had no idea of any confession that Drew made. Therefore, I was still looking for Matt as a missing person. Detective Brown told me at that point Drew had informed him that Matt was in somewhere we assumed in the county, but on someone's property, on Allegra's property, and that gave me more information to go back into the interview with Adil's family.
What was his demeanor like after his parents left the room?
Quite matter of fact. He apologized to me for lying to me. He didn't sound sincere at all, but he was quite matter of fact about everything that he told me.
What would you do if he comes back?
Honestly, after all the crap that's getting pulled right now, I'd honestly want to leave the shit out of him. After what he's done to Michelle and all the shit that everyone else is going through right now.
You wouldn't hurt him seriously?
No, I don't like
X-ray.
You don't.
He did have a laceration on the back of his head, but there was no fracture of the skull. I don't believe either one of those contributed directly to his death, no.
The toxicology report showed Matt had ethanol, bupropion, acetaminophen, and bute.
All the different effects that these drugs could potentially have. And a key drug that's obviously there is ethanol, so that's going to depress his reaction time and a lot of his physical abilities. So they're all things that could have made him more susceptible to dying quickly. But based on the whole scenario and the circumstances with the bag over his head, we didn't feel like the drugs would have had time to take effect because there was a bag over his head that was essentially sealed airtight.
His cause of death was ultimately asphyxiation. After the murder, the teens went to Wendy's. After dropping off a deal at his home, Allegra confided in Ryan that she couldn't live with what had happened. It was haunting her. He told her if asked, she should tell people that she was just having bad dreams about the situation. After school the next day, Allegra said Ryan came up with the idea to tell the Sillimans about their theory that the unauthorized use of Victoria's credit card in DC was possibly done by Matt.
She had a charge to her credit card that she had not paid for, and it was out near the DC area. We were wondering if he was up there because he would have had access to her card.
He wanted us to find him, but I think he had also said he wouldn't let Matt stay at home.
He was accepting that we were there. You know, he was glad that we were there.
Mm-hmm.
But there was like a little undertone of, I think when you know where he is.
And what did you do after you left?
Adil, Ryan, and I went back out to the property to get rid of Matt's stuff.
Did any of the three of you go into the bathroom where Matt was?
Ryan did.
Why did he go in there, did he say?
To see if Matt was alive or not.
And when he came out, what, if anything, did he say?
He said that he kicked him.
Did he say anything else?
No.
If something happened to Matt, what do you think would happen to the person that's responsible for something that's happened to Matt?
Nothing would happen to him.
Well, that's why I'm curious. If something tragic has happened to Matt, you say he's missing, and you're all concerned
over this or something?
I don't know. Don't know yet. I just want to know what you would feel for the person responsible for his demise, if that's what happened.
So I'd probably be pissed at them. I mean, I have my issues with the kid, but is he all right?
Okay, let's cut the chase. Matt's deceased. Okay.
Wait, he's dead?
Yeah. Sound relaxed. Now, your friends were called down to PD tonight, so we could talk about that. And what? Everyone that's involved knows. And everyone that's involved, listen to me. Listen, we've gone around and around.
Okay.
Listen, Michelle's fine. Allegra's fine. Her mother's fine. Her grandmother's fine. Your young friend, Lead, is fine. His parents are fine. But I've got one other man that's not fine.
The hardest part about this case over the past 2 years has been able to describe or figure out why Matt stayed in the house. You know, why didn't he run? Why did he get back in the car? The answer to that is very simple. He trusted his friends.
I didn't really trust him. I didn't really trust him because he betrayed a lot of people. But he was a lot of fun to be around. He was good at making jokes and stuff.
I mean, you said earlier that he was a pain in the ass. Did that feel a pain in the ass that he had to be done away with?
He was a lot of fun to be around. He was on our paintball team. He was one of the captains. He was in the squad lead. He actually had a lot of equipment. It would have been very profitable. Have him on that.
So you liked him for his equipment?
He was a funny guy, too. He was smart with tactics. He was one of the few people on the team that I could actually do signs with.
But Ryan, what I'm asking you is, did your issue with him and Allegra piss you off that much that he had to go?
No.
Well, what was it?
He was freaking kids.
Even then, I could have just left her. There's plenty of girls in the world.
Well, you spoke earlier. You said that there were girls that had cheated on you and stuff that bothered you, but and you weren't going to take someone back that cheated on you. I understood that. But why Matt? I don't get it. Matthew's death, demise, doesn't faze you at all?
Just obviously.
How?
I'm hoping his death was quick. He was a good kid. His girlfriend's an amazing person. He deserves it. One of the nicest kids I've ever met.
You talking about Michelle or Legend?
Michelle. I wouldn't call Legend nice, I call her sweet.
Why did Ryan do it? He did it because...
Kissed my girlfriend.
Kissed your girlfriend. Kiss him or vice versa?
His wording, he stole it. He stole this.
What did she do?
I've read so many stories.
What did she tell you? She kissed him? Slapped shit out of him? What'd she do?
Nothing.
Nothing? Just a kiss. She tell you about it or he tell you about it? They thought it was big enough to tell you about it?
She didn't tell me for 2 weeks.
Was she concerned not to tell you, or she afraid to tell you, or what?
She was worried that she'd break my heart.
That's it. No kids involved, no serious relationship. He made him mad, and he killed him. And Matt thought he was his friend.
How would you describe your relationship with the defendant when you guys got back together?
He was upset with me
Why do you use the word upset?
because he would get more emotional. I guess he'd get angry easier.
And what would he do when he got angry?
He wouldn't talk to me and he wouldn't want me to be near him.
And what would you do when he didn't want you to be near him?
I got upset because I didn't like him being upset. I think we started arguing about everything almost every day.
Did you talk with Ryan about whether or not you had had sex with Matt?
He said he thought I did and that Matt had told him I'd done, I guess, sexual things with him even though I hadn't.
Okay. And so when you were with Ryan, did he accuse you of that?
He asked me, but he didn't believe me when I said no.
If you guys were fighting every day, did you stay together?
We stayed together because I wanted to be with him, and he said he would stay with me if we could work it out.
What kinds of things did you do to try and work it out?
I mean, I would see him every day, and he didn't want me to see Matt anymore, and I would tell him I wasn't seeing Matt even though I would hang out with Matt.
But if you were fighting, why did you decide to try and stick that out?
Because I believed that I really wanted to be with him, and he was the only person I had in my life that cared for me.
Why did you think he was the only person that cared about you?
Because he basically told me it because I fought with my mom a lot, and it got to the point where I didn't know if she cared or not, and he played on that.
What do you mean he played on that?
He would talk to me saying that she only fought with me because of her own insecurities and that she didn't really care for me or what I did. He didn't want me to see Matt anymore, and he didn't want me to talk to him.
And you said that you had told him that you weren't seeing Matt, but would you continue to do so?
Yeah.
Did he ever find out about that?
Yeah.
Okay. And what happened when he found out about that?
We had an argument because he didn't want me to talk to Matt anymore, and I got mad because I said if he could talk to his ex-girlfriend, I should be able to talk to Matt, who was my friend. We were really just arguing, yelling at each other about it.
Earlier on the day of Matt's murder, Allegra and Adil visited Ryan at Firehouse Subs and laid out in front of him the printed conversation they would eventually make Matt read at Allegra's home. The conversation was between Adil and Victoria, the girl Matt visited in DC the weekend before, and contained within was Victoria's acknowledgement that she had sex with Matt, who cheated on Michelle.
Told him that we had sex.
Why did you show that to Ryan?
So that he would know what Matt was doing, and that Matt was lying about everything, that he'd said he was a virgin, and that he couldn't stay faithful to Michelle.
Why would Ryan care about that?
Because Michelle was his friend, and he was tired of Matt messing with every girl.
How would you describe the defendant's demeanor after you showed him that chat?
He was angry.
More than he had been before?
It was kind of like he just shut down, and you could tell he was just angry, and he wouldn't say anything after that.
In the grand scheme of the plan, Ryan, who could barely contain his anger for being slighted, took it upon himself to be mad on behalf of Michelle. But he also had plenty of teen rage fuel to summon from his circle.
I believe Catherine broke up with Adil
Do you know why?
because she was tired of Adil being jealous of Matt.
Adil blamed Matt for that breakup, didn't he?
Yes.
He was furious.
He didn't really come off as angry. I saw him cry about the end of relationship, but I never saw him get angry about it.
Is that the only time you saw Adil break down crying?
Yes. I remember him saying that he kept bringing up Matt to Catherine, saying that she liked Matt more than she did Adil.
That was Adil's problem, wasn't it?
Yes.
He just couldn't handle that.
Right.
Well, how about you? Were you still mad at Matt?
No, I wasn't mad at Matt.
He went back to Michelle by this point.
Yeah.
Were you a bit jealous of their relationship?
I was jealous of the way he cared for her and that I couldn't be that to him.
You recall saying you could never be as pretty or as thin as Michelle. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. I used to say that to a few people before. Guess I felt that way after I realized that I liked Matt too.
When a false rumor, allegedly spread by Adil, emerged that Victoria had gotten pregnant by Matt after his DC trip, the group went into a tailspin. They simply couldn't wait to kill him. They tried it in Allegra's car, but Matt's neck was cushioned by his hoodie. Matt was also wearing a hoodie when he was camping out at Allegra's place, but the killers had some capacity to learn and cut it before trying for the umpteenth time. It appeared then that Ryan, Adil, and Allegra held varying degrees of dislike for Matt. Ryan and Adil, who got back with his girlfriend at midnight on November 30, blamed him for ruining their and their friends' relationships, even if just temporarily. Meanwhile, Allegra altogether felt jilted by Matt's preference for Michelle and his sexual encounter with Victoria, all while worrying that she would lose the only person that she felt cared for her if she didn't win back Ryan's trust. The group had dug a 4-foot hole along the railway tracks earlier on the weekend of Matt's murder, but when they found that the hole had flooded with rainwater after the murder, they just left Matt's body where they killed him, with no real plan to dispose of him. Drew Shaw was initially charged with first-degree murder. He took an Alford plea to accessory after the fact to first-degree murder, meaning he pleaded guilty because he believed there was sufficient evidence for his guilt, but ultimately maintains his innocence. He got 3.5 to 5.5 years. When Allegra was back in school the day after the murder, she noted that with every glare she got, she felt like everyone knew she was involved in Matt's disappearance. Allegra Dahlquist, who was initially charged with first-degree murder, pleaded down to second-degree murder and was given 30 to 37.5 years. "Does he get a last meal?" Adil asked Ryan at 9:48 p.m. on November 25, the day they took Matt to Allegra's property. "I don't know, maybe," Ryan responded. "He might just kill himself," Adil said. Ryan said. "Would that work?" Adil asked. "Might not be good enough for Roger, I don't know," Ryan said. "Ugh," Adil responded. "Does he have to be picky? Sheesh, a corpse is a corpse. If it looks like we had a hand in it, I don't know, maybe," Ryan responded. "Sadly, I'll laugh when this is over, probably," Ryan said, to which Adil responded, "Sadly, I'll get his knives." "He asked me for 2 weeks," Ryan said, which means pray to God I was given that long. "It'll probably hurt, the parts that cared for him as a friend, but oh well," Adil responded. "He had it coming. You take my eye, I take your face. You take my tooth, I take your jaw. You take my girl, I take your life. Sweet justice," Adil said. "Nice code to live by," Ryan said. "I'm for the last one." "Sadly, I'm going to have to lie to Allegra about this later in life," Ryan added later. "Looking at her may make me smile from learning about Matt's fate." "Do you think anyone would take a girl from me again?" Ryan asked. Probably not," Adil responded. "I don't know how I'm going to drag this out for 2 weeks," Ryan said. "I need a lie." Adil Khan also pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was given 32 to 40 years. In a separate conversation, Ryan messaged Matt, "Well, just so you're aware, if my entire life was to protect a girl as amazing as her for just one moment, it would be worth it. Every breath would have been spent well," he said of Allegra. "I really do understand," Matt said. "I hate what I did to you. I doubt anywhere near as much as I hate you for what happened," Ryan told him. "And I said I wanted to kill myself, but I can't put that fucking burden on my parents," Matt said, adding, "If I can get Roger to do it, then it's perfect." That final message prompts one outstanding question.
Who is Roger?
Had you still at this point ever seen this Roger person?
No.
Where is he?
To your knowledge, had Adil ever seen him?
No.
Where'd he come from?
Or Matt?
No.
We know who Roger is.
Do you know if anyone other than the defendant had ever seen Roger?
No.
The story is just a reality. Perception of reality.
What's your perception of reality?
I can't really describe it. You just have your own, this is life. This is how life works.
It's one and the same.
Why did you believe him?
Because I was in love with him.
Ryan is Roger. And I'm not talking about some split personality here. I'm talking about Ryan Hare uses Roger when he gets in trouble.
How long do you think you can keep me in your cell?
How long we can keep you in your cell?
Or like, just keep me away.
Well,
I mean,
I don't understand what you're saying. I'm giving you an opportunity.
You can't put me back out there.
Out there where?
And where I came from, you can't put me.
Why would I want to put you back out there?
Just
don't put you back out there? No, I won't. Okay.
Point the finger at Roger. Who's Roger? Who's Roger? When I get in trouble with a paintball incident, I blame Roger. When I want to control what Matt's doing, I tell Matt that Roger's after him. He's a hitman. He's coming after you, Matt. You got to get out of town. My life or yours. You want to see who Roger is? You look right there. That's who Roger is. He's a scapegoat.
Ryan's defense team argued that the charge of first-degree murder against Ryan cannot stick because the state's evidence doesn't reach the bar to prove it. Hindering the evidence from reaching that threshold, according to them, is the defense's central argument, that Matt had simply given up on his life. Despite telling his family and Michelle that he was going to turn his life around, he stopped taking his meds, was drinking again, and on November 30, accepted his fate, with his closest friends not being willing to stop it. Instead, they gave him information that pushed him over the edge, that is, that Roger was out to get him, which increased his desperation and pushed him to take a deadly cocktail of drugs. The plastic bag over his head only served to hasten the inevitable, the defense argued. Furthermore, the defense argued that the state failed to prove that Ryan was the mastermind, instead suggesting that it was the master manipulator Adil who was the one who planned it. It was Adil who put the tape over Matt's mouth and Allegra who put the bag over his head, the defense said. Adil was the one who took the chats to Ryan to further flame the group's anger, it argued, adding if Ryan wanted Matt dead, why did he let go of the zip tie in the car? Why did he stop hitting him over the head with a hammer? The defense also argued that Allegra held the power in her relationship with Ryan, despite her claim that it was 50-50. It was Ryan who was messaging Allegra every day for the 2 weeks she was exploring her feelings with Matt that showed he loved her more than she loved him, the defense further stated. This was a case that was almost entirely based on co-defendant testimony and not forensics, as there were no DNA or fingerprints to implicate Ryan. Still,
We, the jury, by unanimous verdict, found the defendant, Ryan Patrick Hare, to be, in count 1, guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder on or about October 31st, 2008 through November 25th, 2008. Count 2, guilty of attempted first-degree murder on or about November 25th, 2008. Count 3, guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder on or about November 25th, 2008 through November 30th of 2008. And count 5, guilty of first-degree murder on or about November 30th, 2008. This the 24th day of September, 2010. Are these your verdicts? So say you all. Thank you.
Ryan Hare was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I'd like to apologize to the Silliman family for my part in all this.
don't believe that the entire truth is known, but most of it has been. And for my part in this, I apologize.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry to Matt for what he'll never know, but I do love him and I hope he will be at peace.
I am sorry for what I've done. I really am. I wish I could say more, but it's not going to change anything now. I'm sorry.
I'm very sorry for all of this. And I pray often, sometimes many times a day, that you won't find closure.
We forgive you for what
and
you
God's
did to
healing.
Matt. And I want you to understand that we ask you to consider this. Although Matt's mental and moral faculties were declining, he held on to this truth. Greater love has no man than this, that he will lay down his life for his friends. I'd like for all of us to conclude with this prayer that we taught Matt from the time that he was very small, and that he would ask for us to repeat each night up through middle school. And it's one that's made me, through these events, particularly impressed with its importance for all of us. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life.
After her incarceration, Allegra sent a letter to the Sillimans apologizing for what happened. Every night I dream of Matt, and every day I think over what he has told me. I pray for him to remain in my dreams. I couldn't bear to lose him again. I'm so sorry, I'm never going to be able to explain how much so. She also said, I hope that someday I will get the chance to have a family, and that my son could be as dedicated as Matt was. Also in the letter, Allegra said that what happened was an act of heroism on his part. When asked in court about what she meant by that, Allegra, who also had bouts with depression, said that she admired Matt's commitment to ending it all for his own sake, and not because Roger wanted him to. At the end of the letter was a heart drawing with Matt's name on it. Instead of opening the letter, the Sillimans gave it to police. While Allegra hopes to one day have a son, Matt won't get an opportunity, as he had hoped, to find his birth mom.
He got out some of the papers of his adoption and put them on the table and was looking at that. And we told him, we'll take you to Shreveport anytime you want to go.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to attend this virtual sitting of the gallery. Trial footage is from WRAL News, and other materials are from the courts. I hope you're well, you're doing acts of charity, and don't be Drew, Adil, Allegra, or Ryan. Goodbye.